verse 1, Genesis 13. And we will begin reading with verse 1. So Abram went up from Egypt to the Negev, he and his wife and all that belonged to him, and Lot with him. Now Abram was very rich in livestock, silver, and gold. And he went on his journeys from the Negev as far as Bethel, to the place where his tent had been at the beginning between Bethel and Ai, to the place of the altar which he had made previously. And there Abram called on the name of the Lord. Now Lot, who went with Abram, also had flocks, herds, and tents. And the land could not support both of them while living together, for their possessions were so great that they were not able to remain together. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. Verse 8. So Abram said to Lot, please let there be no strife between you and me, nor between my herdsmen and your herdsmen, for we are relatives. Is not the entire land, or is the entire land not before you? Please separate from me. If you choose the left, then I'll go to the right. Or if you choose the right, then I will go to the left. Verse 10, Lot raised his eyes and saw all the vicinity of the Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, like the garden of the Lord. So Lot chose for himself all the vicinity of the Jordan, and Lot journeyed eastward. Lot settled, verse 12, Lot settled in the cities of the vicinity of the Jordan, and moved his tents as far as Sodom. Now the men of Sodom were exceedingly wicked sinners against the Lord. You may be seated. Now we just finished reading an amazing story. It is an amazing story not because two main characters became so wealthy that they could no longer reside in the same territory. It is an amazing story not because two businessmen decided to talk it out rather than fight it out. It is an amazing story because we see one of these two men bring to this dilemma a shocking, surprising solution. So let's look at verses 8 and 9 again. Abram said to Lot, please let there be no strife between you and me, nor between my herdsmen and your herdsmen, for we are relatives. Is the entire land not before you? Please separate from me. If you choose the left, I will go to the right. Or if you choose the right, then I will go to the left. Now, if a person is reading this story for the first time and knows nothing about Abram, he or she just might be wondering what trick Abram had up his sleeve. I mean, what is his motive? What is the ultimate design behind what could be clever maneuverings? However, we're going to discover in this passage tonight, and especially next week, that Abram had absolutely no trick up his sleeve. That Abram possessed no ill-gotten motive. Abram had not put into play a well-designed plot to catch his business counterpart off guard. Now, what we are going to discover in this story is something far more profound than soap opera fodder. What we are going to see here between this week and next Wednesday night, we're going to see the collision of two world views that are as different as daylight and dark. What we will witness is two men operating out of totally opposite life philosophies. So check out verses 10 and 11 again. Lot raised his eyes and saw all the vicinity of the Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere. Parentheses, this was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, like the garden of the Lord. That's attached to, that last phrase is attached to everywhere, well-watered everywhere, like the garden of the Lord, verse 11. So Lot chose for himself all the vicinity of the Jordan, and Lot journeyed eastward. Now, what we might say here is that Lot moved to the garden district. And that sounds rather beautiful, doesn't it? That sounds cozy. That sounds safe. That sounds as desirous as it does delectable. I mean, don't the finest people live in the garden district? Aren't the choicest of restaurants and boutiques located in the garden district? However, do you think there are no dangers lurking in the garden district? I want you to note the B part of verse 12. Lot settled in the cities of the vicinity of the Jordan, and moved his tents as far as Sodom. To this point, we know nothing else about Sodom. Now look at verse 13. Now the men of Sodom were exceedingly wicked sinners against the Lord. Now verse 13 could actually be read a couple of ways depending on the punctuation, and as you likely know, the original languages had no punctuation in it. So we could read verse 13 like this. Now the men of Sodom were exceedingly wicked, sinners against the Lord. Or we could read it like this. Now the men of Sodom were exceedingly wicked sinners against the Lord. I don't know how much difference that makes, but I think it does make a difference as you read it, that whatever was going on in Sodom, it had been going on for a very long time, and they had sunk to the lowest common denominator. Now we have to ask this question as we read this story. Do you think Lot had any idea about the character of the inhabitants of Sodom prior to his change of address to Sodom? Lot likely thought he was moving to the best residential location in Palestine. Lot likely thought he would be able to place his children in the choicest of schools. Sodom had the finest medical facilities. It just had to. The lawns there were well watered. They were manicured. It made sense to Lot financially. It made sense to Lot commercially. It made sense to Lot in every way. And did not Sodom sell itself as the premier municipality anywhere? Now, having read this information, what does this information tell us about Lot? Now, it's sort of amazing to me as I was doing some research. The name Lot appears 120 times in Scripture. Now, that surprised me. I've been studying the Bible for a long time. And you would figure that Lot's name mostly would be contained within the book of Genesis, and he is very well known within the book of Genesis, but his name, beginning to end, actually appears 120 times in the Word of God. So he is used as an example or as a reference for many centuries to come, and even thousands of years from the moment of Genesis 13 until now. Here's what we learn about Lot. Lot operated by the physical. Now, what does that mean? It means that Lot based his decisions on the visible. He based his decisions on what he could see. It also means that Lot drew his conclusions from the realm of the tangible. I think there's no doubt that Lot probably researched some of this decision that was before him about moving to Sodom. But when you operate by the physical, your conclusions can come out all wrong. See, for Lot, reality was what he could see. For Lot, reality was what he could touch. For Lot, reality was what he could taste. For Lot, reality was what he could smell. For Lot, reality was what he could hear. Now let me give you an example. I want you to take one of your hands, doesn't matter to me which one. I want you to place at least one of your hands on the chair in front of you. And if you just can't reach the chair, you're supposed to be placing your hand on that chair. If you can't reach the chair, then place it on the chair in which you are now sitting. Can you do that? This is called group participation. I know this is difficult. No, don't hold your hand, George, above the... Okay, you got it. George is holding his hand over the chair like he's in Star Trek or something. He's fixed to levitate. So you are touching it. You are feeling it. And you are actually seeing it. That is the tangible world. Okay, you can let go now. People who operate by the physical, they want to see it. They want to touch it. They want to taste it. They want to smell it. They want to hear it. Now, you may be one of those people, or you know one of those people who want to see it, touch it, taste it, smell it, and hear it. There are lots of folks like that in the world, and in fact, I would dare to suggest that most of the people around whom we operate on a daily basis are just like that. Their life philosophy is founded on the physical, and that is how they make their decisions. The physical is all they have. And it impacts and influences everything else in their lives. Now, if I may, what I'd like to do is to point out 5 problems or difficulties with operating by the physical. That is, operating by what you can see, what you can touch, what you can taste, what you can smell, and what you can hear. Now, here's problem number 1 in operating by the physical. The physical world is temporary. In 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 18, Paul wrote, "The things which are seen are temporal." And we could just put any one of those words in there that we wanted to. It's all temporary. The things that we see with our eyes are temporary. Now, what does that mean? It means that the things we can see, the things we can touch, the things we can taste, the things that we hear will ultimately be separated from us. And we will ultimately be separated from them. It means that we will ultimately lose everything we have. It means that ultimately we will lose, you and I will lose everything that is currently in our possession. I don't care what it is. You will lose it. Even now. Whatever we have can be taken by somebody. It can be broken by somebody. And in the end, we die. So the number 1 problem with operating by the physical is that the physical world is only temporary. Now here's the second problem with operating by the physical world. The physical world is passing away. Check out 1 John chapter 2, verses 15a and 17. "Do not love the world, nor the things in the world." Verse 17, "The world is passing away." Now, I left out the material in between, which says, do not love the world nor the things in the world, for all that is in the world is the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the lust of the ego. So basically everything we see in this world, we can say, you know what, my body wants it. That's the flesh. Or my mind wants it. That's the eyes. Or my ego wants it. That's the boastful pride of life. All that stuff is passing away. A year ago, I bought a Ford pickup truck, a Ranger. They had 84 months no interest. Which, I mean, you had to pay it back, but it's like the money's not costing you anything except you just got to pay it back. And I was out polishing up my truck the other day, and a couple came by. They were walking their little dog, and they came by, and the wife said, "Oh, I love your Ford Ranger." And the man said, "Yeah, but I got to tell you, the other day it was the dirtiest I've ever seen. It was filthy." I was so glad I was in the process of cleaning it up right at that moment. And I told Donna afterwards, I said, man, that puts pressure on me to keep that truck cleaned up. Well, guess what, folks? There's going to come a time when I'm going to be separated from that truck. And there's going to come a time when that truck is going to be separated from me. And it could be taken, it could be broken, and it will be decimated altogether. Everything is passing away. We touch it, we see it, we taste it, we smell it. It's deteriorating, it's passing away. Now, I'm going to suggest to you tonight that it is difficult for us to imagine this biblical truth. In fact, if we're honest, I think it is extremely hard for us truly to see anything is passing away. For example, consider the terms we use when we describe heaven. Do you know what I hear people talking about in heaven? Fishing in heaven. Yeah. The fishing is going to be great in heaven. And if there's fishing, I imagine it will be. And you know what? I hear other people talk about golfing in heaven. There's going to be the greatest golf courses ever in heaven. And I used to hear my dad talk about heaven. And many times he said he believed that in heaven that the atmosphere around us would be at a constant 70 degrees with a gentle breeze blowing perennially. And that's a great image of heaven. But you know what? I'm not sure at all about any of that imagery. And let me show you why. Take note of the words penned by the writer of Hebrews in chapter 1, verses 11 and following. Notice what he said. The earth, the present earth and heavens, the present earth and the present heavens will perish. They will, verse 11, they will wear out like a garment. You know, I hate to tell you this, I've got underwear I've been wearing for 30 years. Have any of you? And you know what? None of it is as in good a shape as it was 30 years ago. Did any of you have that? Yeah. I pulled out a pair of athletic socks to put on the other day, and on the toe of that sock it had Dad. And Donna started laughing because, you know, when our boys were at home, when our kids were at home, and they wore the same kind of socks I did, if she didn't put my name on them, if she didn't put their name on them, my socks would disappear. So I had to check out my son's feet once in a while. And there'd be Dad. Dad would be right there. Well, you know, that goes back over 30 years. And believe it or not, those socks are wearing away. Yeah. And listen, I got to tell you, I just love my old stuff so much that even when my underwear gets a hole in it, I just keep wearing it. Any of you do that? I just keep wearing it. Until Donna sees it. Look at that. Too much information. And then Donna says, I'm throwing that away. It's going to wear out like a garment. And look at this, like a robe. The present heavens, the present earth. God will roll them up like a garment. They will also be changed. That is stunning, is it not? Note Revelation verse 1, chapter 21 says that John saw a new heaven and a new earth. Now notice that word translated new. It speaks of a heaven and an earth that are new both in kind and quality. Now what does that mean? It means that you and I have not and will not experience anything in this world that could compare to anything in the new world. That is the world that's coming. Now amazingly, that idea frightens some folks because anything they do not know or understand produces fear. However, listen to the words of Paul in verse 9 of 1 Corinthians 2. Things which eye has not seen and ear has not heard and which have not entered the human heart. All that God has prepared for those who love Him. And we read that. And you know what I think? For most of us, those words simply do not compute. And we pull up images of heaven like streets of gold and walls of pearl and gates of, or is it gates of pearl and walls of jasper? Whatever it is, those are earthly images that cannot begin to depict what heaven is going to be like. Do you understand that? Everything is going to be completely new, not just in quality, but in kind. We have never seen it before. And it scares us. Do you remember the 1985 movie Cocoon? In one particular scene, the character Ben Luckett, played by Wilford Brimley, is attempting to explain to his grandson that he would be going away and he wouldn't be coming back. And he said to his grandson, I will never be sick again, and I will never die. And then he said, but there will be no hot dogs and no baseball. Nothing like that. And of course the grandson was upset about the possibilities of his grandfather going away, but no baseball. No hot dogs. We are so tied to this earthly dimension. It is as if we have been mesmerized and tranquilized by it. We really cannot begin to fathom a new heavens and a new earth. We can't. Well, Connell, why didn't God tell us? Here's the answer. Because we couldn't take it in. There's no way we could comprehend it. Paul talked about passing into the third heaven, the completed heaven. You know what he said? He said, I saw things and there are no words to describe it. No words. There are no words in the English language. There are no words in any human language that can describe what he saw. He said, I can't even tell you because there aren't words to do it. That's why when we're all together in heaven, we're going to have to speak a new language. Nobody's going to be speaking English. Nobody's going to be speaking Chinese or Russian or Spanish, because those languages don't have any words to describe what we are going to be seeing with our eyes. There's no way we could comprehend it. Now, folks, I don't know about you, but if you're one of these, is it the right side brainers, the right brain siders, the concrete thinkers? They have difficulty with this. Are you a concrete thinker? They have difficulty with it because they want to see it, they want to smell it, they want to taste it, they want to touch it. But then is it the left side brainers or the brainer left siders that are more creative? This appeals to them. Now, we have a few earthly images in the Bible that attempt to depict heaven. Yet I suggest to you that there is no earthly image that can even begin to do heaven justice or even begin to portray it. So God's given us a few images that we can more readily comprehend. But then oftentimes we put more into the image, I think, than we should as to what the meaning behind the image may be. So the number one problem with operating by the physical is that the physical world is temporary. The second problem with operating by the physical is that the physical world is passing away. The third problem with operating by the physical is that the physical world is woefully vulnerable to the influences of evil. Now let's go back to verses 10 and 11 in Genesis 13. Lot raised his eyes, and he saw all the vicinity of the Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, like the garden of the Lord. It was known in that ancient world as the Fertile Crescent. So Lot chose for himself all the vicinity of the Jordan, and Lot journeyed eastward. If you have trouble with that, he journeyed toward what would now be Asia. Notice Proverbs 18:11. A rich person's wealth is his strong city, and like a high wall in his own imagination. Now let's go to Psalm 49, verses 10 through 13. Even wise people die. The foolish and stupid alike perish and leave their wealth to others. Their inner thought is that their houses are forever and their dwelling places to all generations. They have named their lands after their own names. But man in his splendor will not endure. He is like the animals that perish. This is the way of those who are foolish. Everything is based on the physical, and the more of the physical they can grasp, then the greater outcome it's going to be. Well, here's Lot. He's no different than most of us. He could see he wasn't an idiot. Lot chose the fertile, well-watered Jordan Valley. But evil overtook his family. Wealth and possessions provide no protection against the forces of darkness. Notice what Jesus said in Luke chapter 12, verse 15. Be on guard against every form of greed, for not even when one is affluent does his life consist of his possessions. When will we learn the treachery of evil influences that come with choices based on the physical. Is there anything wrong with wealth? No. But with it comes a heightened sense or influence of evil. And that the more wealthy a person becomes, the more likely it is that they will succumb to the evil influences of wealth. So the number one problem with operating by the physical is that the physical world is temporary. Number two, the physical world is passing away. Number three, the physical world is woefully vulnerable to the influences of evil. Here's the fourth problem with operating by the physical. The physical world is usually ruled by an obsession with one question. What is the question? Here it is. What will enrich me? And we're not here simply talking about dollars and cents. We are talking about in every sense. What will enrich me? What will make me look good? What will get me to the top? What will enable me to lord it over the people around me? Now, there is a problem with this question. What do you think it is? Now, if we were still using the same format that we used back in the fellowship hall, we'd just take about 15 minutes and open it up to different ideas. And it would be very interesting. But what is wrong with the question, what will enrich me? Here it is. Are you listening? It necessitates that I lose sight of others. Said another way, the question, what will enrich me, results in such a heavy focus on self that self can no longer see the people around them. Here's the fifth problem with operating by the physical world. When decisions are based solely on human resources, any activity based on the resources of God is stripped away. In other words, we begin operating within the confines of physical limitations rather than operating by the limitless possibilities that come from the hand of God. And so what do? We actually shrink the boundary of opportunity and potentiality. In Ephesians 3:20, Paul wrote that God is able to do far more abundantly beyond all that we ask or think, according to the power that works within us. Let me give you a companion verse out of Luke chapter 1, verse 37. Nothing will be impossible with God. Now, the context of those words is the promise of a child being born to a virgin and another child being born to an old woman. Now, if that can happen, anything can happen. Do you believe that happened? In fact, this phrase originally originated in the story of Abraham and Sarah, when one of the angels said, nothing is impossible with God. You know, they said that she was going to have a baby. She just started laughing. That's where this was born. Do you believe that a virgin named Mary had a baby? Do you believe that an old woman named Elizabeth had a baby? If you believe that, then it changes everything about the way we operate in this world. Because we can't believe that and remain within the confines of the physical. We can't believe that and then live with potentialities and possibilities being stripped away. So allow me to ask two questions. Here's number one. Do I want to live merely by what I can see? Now think about that. In fact, I would suggest that you write that question down so you can ponder it later tonight or tomorrow. Do I want to live merely by what I can see? Here's question number two. Am I willing to live by what I cannot see? Now, there may be a better way to ask that second question. It's not going to be up on the screen, I don't think. I'm just going to give it to you. Am I courageous enough to live by what I cannot see? Because let me tell you something, it takes guts to live by what you cannot see. Living by what you cannot see is not a life philosophy for the immature. It is a life philosophy for men and women who believe with all of their heart, not that God can, but that He will. Not that I will have, but I already have. And those tenses are important. And when we look at Genesis chapter 13, the first part of this book, we are already seeing these truth principles in play. And they are still in play today. We don't live as believers by what we can see. We live by what we cannot see. Do you know what keeps most churches from really accomplishing great things for God? They refuse, they are not courageous enough to live by what they cannot see. They are imprisoned and confined in the realm of the physical. And if they can't see it, if they can't touch it, if they can't taste it, if they cannot smell it, if they cannot hear it, then it cannot possibly happen. But that is not our stance. Do you believe that? We are limited only by our insistence upon operating merely by the physical. Well, okay, Connell, give me just a short description of living by what you cannot see. Are you ready for this? It's just one short sentence. Are you ready for this? It's going to take me a minute to remember it. I just had it right on the tip of my tongue. No, here it is. It is a willingness to step out as if on nothing, and trusting that by the time your foot comes down, solid ground will be beneath it. This was never better illustrated than in the movie. can't even think of it now. It's a Harrison Ford movie. What was the last one he did? Do you remember? The last one he did, and they were in Petra. They were in Petra. They were at the temple in Petra. Of course, they called it something else. They actually went into that temple. Don and I have been there in the city of Petra, and so they're using this temple. And they were going after the Holy Grail. You remember that? There was this huge separation between where they were and where the Grail was. And one of the signs was that you have to pass through what you cannot see. And everybody was afraid to take that step until someone threw a handful of rocks out into what seemed to be nothing, and all of a sudden a bridge appeared. You couldn't see it with the human eye. But if you took that leap of faith, you hit solid ground. Now, if you go out and do something stupid, don't blame me. If you go out and do something stupid, don't say, well, Connell taught me into it. No, here's what I'm telling you. If you want to come out from the limitations of the physical and join the ranks of what you cannot see, then you step out as if on nothing and trust solid ground to be placed beneath your feet. That's it. And I don't know about you, but most people, even within the realm of Christianity, are not courageous enough to operate by what they cannot see. Let's pray together. Father, in this moment, we are just greatly challenged. I'm challenged. I feel like our folks here are challenged. Lot refused to see what could not be seen. And it cost him. It cost him his wife. It cost him his sons-in-law. It cost him his home. It cost him just about everything. It's so easy to walk by the physical because we live in the physical. And for most of us, it's just hard to go beyond the physical. And yet, when we talk about having a relationship with you, that is just something that's way yonder out there beyond the physical. And you just promised that if we'd seek you first and your kingdom first, that you'd just take care of all the basic necessities, that we could focus on going beyond what we cannot see. And I don't know what you may be doing in the lives of the folks who are here, or the lives of the folks who are going to be listening via the internet or YouTube or other electronic media sources as they are exposed to this truth. I don't know what you're doing. But Father, I know this. If we are going to enjoy the explosive dynamic of life beyond the physical, then somehow we've got to find a courageous heart. A courageous heart that is willing to trust you for whatever is out there. And what we ask in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you.